How big of a deal is it that Cohn resigned amid this push towards tariffs, and how will his resignation impact the policies rollout as well?
I think, well, first off, I'd say that, Gary's a great guy and a tremendous American patriot and a great businessman. So having him in the White House, from a business perspective was great for American business. I do think, though, when you look at Gary's chops and what he's really good at, Gary got tax reform done. He sort of took the lead on that. He got to sort of tariffs, what's going to happen with that. Clearly lost that battle internally in the White House. And I think in terms of Gary's expertise, he's sort of done. So Gary moving on doesn't really surprise me. I mean, I'm not sure if I can believe all the stories about exactly why. I doubt there was a big fight in the White House. It's not Gary's style. My guess is he said, okay, I've done what I can do here. I got tax reform. That was historic. That was a big thing for him, and he took the lead on that. And, the tariff battle's over. I mean, clearly the president's going to start initiating some of these tariffs.
Right, and of course it seems like, as the reports coming out that everybody in the White House keeps calling Gary Cohn a globalist, they might have very different economic views once tax reform is passed on where to go from here. Eric, let's bring you into the picture. How big of a loss is this for the White House? So many people on Wall Street are saying Gary Cohn was their one way to keep this economic growth to keep going.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a big loss for the White House losing Gary Cohn, and I think tariffs are going to be a big loss for the White House in the long run, too. But, I mean, yeah, Cohn, as you said, is the first victim of this. He won't be the last. American workers, American manufacturers, American companies, American consumers are all going to lose if these tariffs go through. I guess the only sort of question that I have about the whole Gary Cohn leaving the White House narrative that we're reading in the press and that we're hearing right now is, if he was going to lose this battle on tariffs, why walk away there? Why not stay and try to prevent, who knows what the next economic protectionist policy that the president wants to implement could be? I think you're kind of right that after getting tax reform through, there was obviously a bit of a divergence between what most of this administration wants to pursue in terms of economic policy and what Gary Cohn and Wall Street want to see. But I think not having him in that room, not having him part of that conversation is probably bad news over the long run, not just for this tariff issue.
I mean, look, we've been following this as more details emerge, of course, from the breakouts of the tariffs. For some of our viewers, though, let's just recap very quickly, Todd. What exactly does this mean for some of the industries that it will impact and those particular percentages? Is there a way that we came to those percentages? Is there any thought process behind it?
Right, 10 to 25%.
I think there's really not necessarily any real rhyme or reason to all of it. I think there's a few things going on here. One is, this shouldn't be a big surprise to any of us. He ran on this when he won the presidency. Two, he's negotiating. It's a long game for him on what I would sort of say is, free trade equals fair trade. I mean, he talked about this all through his election cycle. That's his goal, is to get to that. Three, tariffs are bad. Tariffs are a tax, right? If you have good trade policy and good trade agreements in place, you don't need tariffs. So clearly the president thinks we need tariffs as sort of a marker to lay down there. I don't think these steel tariffs and aluminum tariffs are going to amount to much in terms of the entire economic picture that we have in this country right now. I don't think this is going to knock Wall Street down today or over the next 2 weeks. I don't think this is going to put the American worker or American steel industry out of business in any way, shape, or form. But it's certainly going to cost the consumer more for steel and aluminum. And let's hope these things go away. Let's hope these tariffs go away. Let's hope the president's negotiating tactic works. Let's hope the tariffs then go away and we've got some decent trade policies in place across the board. And then really we got bigger fish to fry. We've got a huge labor shortage. We need immigration reform. We need to rebuild our infrastructure. That's, 16th in the world right now. It's an embarrassment. There's lots of stuff we need to do here, that can really drive this economy, the sort of the pillars of the economy. Tariffs aren't one of them.
Yeah, and Eric, we know the president knows that he's in the minority position on this. A lot of Republicans have come out chastising this move, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell as well. Goldman Sachs actually just released a report saying that the tariffs could actually have a significant negative effect on the economy. Paul Ryan's been really pushing the president to change his mind. We know Gary Cohn tried to do that as well. But at this point, do you feel like the president doesn't care? He's already made up his mind on this.
It does kind of seem that way, and I mean, this is not a theoretical question. We know what tariffs do to the economy. We have, plenty of historical examples. When George W. Bush put tariffs on steel, it was sort of a range between like 8 and 30%, but the higher costs cost somewhere around about $4 billion out of the economy, according to one assessment. You look at what this ultimately, the balance here is the question of protecting the American steel industry versus hurting all the American industries that use steel, right? 140,000 Americans are employed in the steel industry. It contributed about $36 billion to the economy last year. But there's 6.5 million Americans who work in steel-consuming industries. That's everything from auto manufacturers all the way down to every little gizmo and gadget that you have in your house, and they added $1 trillion to the economy last year. So clearly, this is protectionism on the president's part that's aimed at helping a very small slice of the economy. And I don't know that he's fully considered the consequences or looked back at the historical record to see what these what similar policies have done in the past. I hope it's a negotiating tactic. I hope my colleague here is right, that this is just a step towards getting us something else, because as it stands right now, this would be a disastrous policy for the country.
Right. And Jonathan Swan over at Axios was reporting just a few moments ago, according to 2 senior administration officials, the president wants to sign a proclamation on the steel and aluminum tariffs tomorrow. Yeah. So this actually might be coming a lot sooner than we think.
Absolutely. We'll see if the negotiation tactic actually does pay off, but we'll have to continue to track it very closely. The Dow has now dipped below 300-point mark. Todd Hitt, CEO of Kiddar Capital, and Eric Boehm, reporter at Reason.com. Thank you both for joining us here today on Cheddar.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
All right, guys.